Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri Lauren. And Lauren, what is killing me is we took a week off just because I was coming back from vacation, just needed some time to catch up. And it doesn't really feel like much has happened with this team. Free agency isn't over. Like there are still guys out there to be signed. And certainly I think the Panthers may be waiting on some deals. I don't know what you call this. Do you call this like the dregs of free agency where things creep along like very slowly?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, there was certainly like a lot of activity, you know, in the initial time of free agency by the Panthers. But yeah, it seems like it's more or less slowed down with the exception of at least one signing that I know bothered some people or re-signing, even though it was just a 1-year contract. But like, yeah, I mean, it seems like they're kind of in wait and see. And you would kind of expect that because, again, even though we agreed that money seems fake now, like that has to still be a factor.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fake cash to throw around so early on. So, yeah, certainly I understand that. Also, you know, after all that money gets thrown around, the needs are a little bit less. So there is less reason to be as active right now as there was early on. We'll get into what may still be out there in a little bit. I did see an interesting piece from SI that looked at the Panthers now after the first wave of free agency and sort of looked at who is coming back to this roster and how secure their spot actually is. They framed it as what defenders are on the hot seat after the defensive makeover. And down at number 5, they had EviroEvero. The defensive coordinator has been the defensive coordinator each of the last 2 years. I think during the season, I got very frustrated with this defense and with the amount of slack given to EviroEvero, just because there was so much basic stuff this team was doing wrong. I do take issue with the idea, though, that he is somehow now more on a hot seat than before because I don't know how this isn't a make or break year, no matter what sort of talent they add to that defense. But
right.
But B, I don't know that they have added so much to the defense now that you can look at the guy and say, well, there's no excuse. Like, how is this significantly better than going into last year?
It depends on the spot you're looking at, right? Obviously, because when you look in the secondary, it should still make your stomach do flip-flops. It does mine. I mean, they literally have 3 safeties on the roster right now, and one was trash last year.
Yeah.
One was not good. So, and, you know, that's not great. And the other is, and one of the other 2 is an undrafted free agent. So, like, It's not great. That is concerned. And then the other guy's the free agent, Mooring. So, you know, like that is the list. That is the list of safeties. That is not where you want to be. Like, You have to play 2 of them at a time. Like most people do, you know, you can.
Right. And so like you have to assume like the roster's not complete yet. Right. But
they've improved. Here's the thing, though. This is where I'd push a little bit back is that already the pass rush is way better already. And maybe not like way better, but it's certainly better, like markedly better. There is more depth. There's more. I was
about to say there are bodies now. That is a nice change of pace from before.
I mean, yeah, it is. And like they got like, I think I wrote about this. If they could have combined the defensive tackles they signed into, you know, like Milton Williams or whatever, like maybe, but they did get a run stopper at defensive tackle and they got a pass rusher at, you know, in that spot. So again, already you're improving things in that front. They got some more rush. They got some pass rushers, some specialty guys. You know, I have some question marks about some of the deals because some of them were a little pricey, but you know, so already they have more in the pass rush department than they did a year ago. And let's be honest, okay? No matter what the secondary looks like, you could have the best secondary in the universe. If you don't have a pass rush, it's gonna look like trash. It just is. Like,
yeah. I mean, and that's sort of where I kind of wonder, well, when do we start to say, okay, we feel good about this group? Because you've only got 1 first-round pick. So on day 1, you've got to decide, are you sticking at number 8 and getting the best pass rusher available?
Right.
Are you trading down to a spot where maybe it makes more sense to take a Malachi Starks or a Nicky Manwari out of South Carolina and you fill that safety spot? Either way, you are going into day 2 with looking at a little worse options than you were before at whichever position you didn't take. So then we have to factor in, okay, we need time for that secondary group to grow together, or we need time for the prize of the pass rushed out to come into form. I am all for holding Evero accountable to grow this defense. I just don't know that I look at the group of free agents that have been brought in and say, well, that should do it. Certainly that should take you from low 20s to
Yeah.
high 20s, maybe low teens. But
No, that's the thing. Two things. One, if you think this defense is getting quick fixed, you don't think this, but I'm saying like you general thinks that this defense is getting like quick fixed in a year, no matter what kind of signings they make. That ain't happening. It's just not. Because this was like an historically bad defense by Panthers and NFL standards. It was horrendous. It was terrible. And to me, this is why I gave Evero more of a pass, because I do believe that adage about pass rush starting up front. And the Panthers did not, especially after Derek Brown went out, they had nothing. They had nothing up front. They had no pass rush. You could watch quarterbacks sit back there and make a ham sandwich. And you could. I mean, I really felt like there were at least some quick meals that could have been made back there in the amount of time that they were given. And so to me, like, I just don't, that's why I gave him more of a pass, because it's like, what do you do if you don't have a pass rush? Like, there's just not a whole lot you can show us. And so for me, that's why I do think this year is more of that for me, because you are improving that. Is it going to be fixed completely? Like, is it going to be a playoff caliber defense? I don't necessarily think so. But can they get it back to like passable, decent, okay? If they can get it back to like even just like slightly below average, they at least have a chance to win some games that last year Bryce would have had to have scored on every single. We literally saw that several times, right? Like that they would have had to score every time they had the ball to win some of those games, because the other team was scoring every time they had the ball. So
that basically was the last 2 wins, right? That was basically Arizona and Atlanta, what the team had to do. I think neither you or I believe that this is a playoff team. We believe by virtue of the quality of the division, if they ended up in the playoffs, it's not far-fetched, but it doesn't, like, you're not betting your life on it. You are not betting any significant amount of money on it.
No.
I sometimes think about Evero, and this is regardless of who is on his roster. I think about Evero almost as a prisoner on multiple fronts. He is a prisoner of his reputation, of what he did with Denver. Like, there are a lot of people that are wondering why hasn't he flipped that switch yet? Why hasn't he done that in Carolina?
I mean, he's not a wizard.
Right. Right.
He's not a witch or something, warlock, whatever they,
Yeah. I mean, that's the other part, is like, he's also a prisoner of whatever Dan Morgan's priority is. And that's not me doubting Dan Morgan. It is just the reality that 2 years ago, the priority was defense. And we saw what that paid off with last year, or excuse me, the priority was offense. And we saw what that paid off with.
Yes.
This is a dude that reputation, as much as it could kind of make him a prisoner, remember, after the most hopeless season in Panthers history, at least that was according to some people that covered the team, going all the way back to the 1-15 season. The 2-15 season felt more hopeless. The guy still got multiple interviews for the Atlanta coaching job. Like, his reputation has not suffered. And I think to fire Evero would, for people that are always looking for the evidence that the Panthers are lost, it would just be more evidence that they don't know what the hell they're doing, but it's not working out so far.
Well, but not to mention the fact that, like, honestly, that's progress for this league, considering the way, black coaches are usually, the standards they're usually held to.
Sure.
Which is like, have one bad year and you're done.
Yeah.
So, it's actually, like, I think also a good thing that his reputation has held through all of this, because you don't see that all the time, or you've seen that not happen in the past, where that hasn't been the case. And so, I think maybe people think that it's just a function of him being with a dysfunctional organization, which is not an unreasonable thought process based on history.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do think if he does if the defense does not produce this year,
yes,
and there is no momentum towards moving
Right.
on, consequences, whatever the case may be. Well, then there's going to be the other side of the black coaching debate, which I guarantee you is about to get a lot louder, which is, well, of course, they're not going to touch him. It's a DEI hire. And I don't think that is particularly fair to him. I just don't know. And that's not what I'm saying is going on
I
here
know,
at
I know.
all. I'm saying if you are trying to protect the guy in some way, because you know deep down the reputation is real, if he's not showing any strides toward that, even if you think it's the fault of your roster, I don't think that you are doing him any favors. And I think you're bringing him over and over again into a locker room that will have eventually lost faith in him.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I just also, I don't, these guys aren't dumb though. You
Yeah.
know, like they also see the personnel around them. They also see quarterbacks having 10 years to throw.
Right.
Like, and they know how football works, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think maybe some of that isn't quite giving Evero enough credit either, because, or isn't giving the players enough credit, rather, is for being able to kind of, like, to me, that's always what it's been very obvious. And so, like, anybody, like, anytime anybody called for Evero's job last year, I'd be like, I get it, because, like, whenever your defense is that bad, you have to look in that direction a little bit. But at the same time, I told you from the jump last year, from before the season started, looking at that D line made my tummy hurt. Okay.
Right.
Like, I was like, this is really bad. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, Demetri, this is bad. Like, this is bleak. This is not good. And so, you know, we knew that going in. Everybody knew that going in. And again, like I said, everything starts up front. And so for me, the fact that they bolstered that somewhat, you know, you do have, like you said, I agree with you completely, though. You do have to start showing, I think, improvement. And again, it could be a mutually beneficial thing. And if his reputation continues to stand when they don't turn things around, it could be a situation where, you know, they agree that maybe that's the best thing for both parties, is to have a fresh start, and it might not even be his fault, you know, depending on how things shake out. But sometimes that's just the way it goes. And if he stays here too long, his reputation might start falling too long and too badly in the other way. And I think he'll understand that too, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I want to pivot in the free agent market to what the team has not done yet, could still do, etc. And that is, I look at who is still out there. And even though there are no big game breakers left on the free agent market in terms of wide receivers, I do wonder if at this point you see some guys that are still sitting out there. And if you are Dan Morgan, why would you not look at an Amari Cooper, a TylerLockett, a Keenan Allen, these guys that are over 30, so you're not investing in them long term, but do have a history of being that alpha dog receiver? And even if it's just for 1 year to help Bryce take that next step, and you can get these guys on a discount, why wouldn't you do it? I will, full disclosure, by the way, I started thinking about this and wrote the rundown with Stephon Diggs in mind. And as soon as I hit enter, the news broke that he was going to
I was
New
about
England.
to say, because I was like, well, if that's the going rate for those guys, then I don't really see the point. But
I am operating under the assumption that New England was so desperate for a wide receiver, they were not playing in the same fiscal ballpark as everybody else.
yeah, I mean, obviously, clearly, because I was like, I saw that number and I was like, what, for him?
Yeah.
Now, but Keenan Allen is somebody that I've actually always really loved. And I was always, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like the Panthers would have had a chance at drafting him when he came out, and they didn't. And ever since then, I've just sort of looked at him wistfully, and really admired the way he's played for his career, and just been like, God, I wish we could have had him. You know, he just gave me like Moose vibes a little bit, Musim Muhammad.
Sure.
I was like, I just loved him, and I still love him. So if he came, I'd be thrilled. I mean, I guess they feel like Thielen fills that role a little bit. I know they re-signed David Moore. He's not quite the name that those guys are, but he does bring a little bit of that experience factor. I was happy to see that they did that, because I was happy with the way that he played, and happy that I now know his name, as opposed to when he was catching passes at the beginning of there, and I'm like, whom is that? So, you know, there's Thielen there filling a little bit of that. But again, if they can it's all about getting someone cheap. Like, that's really the biggest thing. Like, if you have to pay that Diggs money, they have way bigger needs on this team than that. But if they can get someone for relatively cheap, I would say, sure, go for it. Yeah.
The Diggs money, by the way, I believe was it 3 years for $63 million. Like it was way
It's a lot.
outside of
It was way too much.
Yeah, it was way too much. I hear
Like
you with what
JC
you're
Horn's contract makes more sense to me than that one.
it honestly does.
Yes.
Like at least JC Horn is not coming off of an ACL tear, looking at the wrong side of 30, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, I hear you.
Okay.
I think so. I hear what you're saying with Thielen provides the
Some of it,
mentorship and steady hand. For Bryce, I look at, so Amari Cooper, for my liking, has been too up and down. He has great years and he has years where he completely disappears. If you're bringing in a dude on a 1-year deal, I don't want to mess with that. The guy I look at in that group is TylerLockett.
Yeah.
Now, granted,
yeah.
Lockett's, he's a little bit older, has a little bit more of an injury history, but it seems to me that peak TylerLockett is best case scenario for XavierLegette. So I think that it's not just about giving Bryce another veteran target that has been the focus before. It's also about giving XL somebody to model habits and game after in the locker room. And that certainly is not in the Panthers receiving room right now.
Well, that's why I'd be thrilled with him or Keenan, especially. Like Keenan is that type of guy as well, from what I understand about him. And you know, to have this kind of longevity at that position in this league and to be relatively steadily productive as well is like nothing to sneeze at. And he hasn't always been on the best teams either. So, you know, so he's used to that. So at least we know that won't be a shock to his system.
Right.
To come here. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be really good. Because, you know, I have my questions about X and I don't want to. I want, again, like, please let me love you. I'm trying.
Yeah. You know, the XL thing is interesting because we are just now, before year 3, we are just now feeling like, okay, we think we have the quarterback. And I think that it's fair to say we still think we have the quarterback, not undying confidence. I wonder, I cannot think of a situation where a quarterback and receiver were developing at the same time and that worked out well for both of them. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do wonder if X is the guy in the receiving room with the most upside, how much better realistically can that make Bryce Young? Or maybe the better question is, how much can a dude like that do to overcome some of Bryce's shortcomings, which do still exist?
Oh, of course. Yeah. For me, I just want him to catch it. Like, that's
sure.
I mean, I know, like, okay, duh, Lauren, like, but, well, it wasn't always the case. And,
right.
You know, I'm a little bit like somebody who's been only in relationships with cheaters.
Sure.
And I'm dating a guy that seems great and I have no reason to think anything's wrong, but like maybe he's just giving me like some 1 or 2 suspicious behaviors every now and then that I'm like, I don't, you know, so I'm projecting a lot of my own insecurities about wide receivers onto Xavier. And I can recognize that in myself. But at the same time, it is also like, it's so frustrating to watch sometimes because you're just like, please just literally catch the ball. Like, just that is why is it so hard for these high draft picks of the Panthers to just, that is in your job description. It is right there. It is receive the football and to maintain.
It's so funny in this situation. Like there is a dating analogy here for me in this argument as well, which is, there is nothing wrong with XL. I think XL is it can be a great receiver, seems like a really good presence in the locker room. But Lauren, as your friend, as someone who loves you, I know you deserve so much better, and there's got to be better out there.
It's like he seems like a great guy, but every now and then he'll be like, did we really land on the moon? And you're like, or something like that, or like, I don't know about vaccines, just asking questions. And I'd be like, and he's like, you know, I'll get vaccines. I'm vaccinated.
I'm vaccinated. I'm just saying, really interesting discussion on Rogan today.
Oh, right. Oh, well, that would be beyond it. I'd be like, bye. Okay. So yeah. But, yeah. I mean, like it's that kind of stuff where you're like, well,
I'm vaccinated. I donate to Planned Parenthood. I'm just saying the Cybertruck is a good looking vehicle.
What's all this controversy with Elon Musk? You'd be like,
Seems like a fun guy.
Right.
He's
He's really smart. I don't understand.
Yeah. Oh, well, he's smarter than you. That's for sure. The thing I think that probably throws this whole discussion argument out the window is, especially on offense, it does not seem like 1-year deals or short-term gambles or even something Dan Morgan wants to take time to discuss. Like, that's just not how he seems like he wants to build this offense. And I get it. That is the smarter strategy. I just don't know if the Panthers are in a position to stick with the smarter strategy all the time.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure about that because, I mean, Moore is on a 1-year deal, I think. Dowdle is, right? Isn't his a 1-year?
Dowdle seems like an absolute one-of-one situation to me. Moore is, but Moore is on a 1-year deal after already spending, 4 years with the team?
Yeah.
So that one's a little different. You're right. Dowdle is the short-term investment, but I can't think of a whole lot of other examples of that.
Well, and the O-line, I know a couple of those guys are back on ones, on 1 years. So, I mean, like, for me, I think it might just be like a structural thing on the offensive side in terms of reset. I mean, Trimble's deal isn't super long, I don't think. Was it?
No,
he's like 2?
He got 2, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so it's not like they're averse to short-term thinking on that side. But I also feel like, for the most part, I'm not saying that it's not like they think everything's fixed, and nor should they. But at the same time, I think that they think like, okay, we addressed this side extensively last year and it made the improvements we want to see. And now we have to devote that energy to this defense that was god awful.
Speaking of last year, you know who else is sitting out there unsigned right now in the receiving class? Deontay Johnson is still looking for a home.
He'll find one because those guys always do. I mean, think about how many teams kept re-signing Antonio Bryant, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
And you were like, why? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because if you think about the number of teams that kept bringing him in, even after he was done being Antonio Bryant on the field, and he was very much Antonio Bryant off the field all the time. Like,
head case wide receivers are the white quarterbacks with physical skills of the NFL. Like, they're the ones that you're like, that guy's still playing? Like, but he sucks every time he's in. And they're like, yeah, but look at his arm strength. And you're like, what?
Don't forget Balls versus Cancer. We are working with the American Cancer Society and bringing back old friends of mine and Lauren's. The Sklar brothers are performing along with Ovius and Giglio. That show is April 15th. Tickets are on sale now at eTix or at therialto.com. Come on out. It'll be a fun night. Ovius and Giglio are doing a sort of Carolina Hurricanes game show with our old pal Sarah Sivian, and the Sklars are performing as well. It will be a great night. All the money goes to the fight against testicular cancer. Get your tickets right now at eTix or therialto.com. It is Balls versus Cancer, starring the Sklar brothers. Lauren, I saw an article that made me giggle.
I know you put this in here to upset me.
It made me giggle in part because I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. It's not something I would have thought of, and it's not something I think the Panthers need, but I knew the second I saw it. Lauren Brownlow was going to be ready to throw hands. It came from Cat Scratch Reader. They specifically pointed to Jalen Milroe, Alabama's quarterback. By the way, Bryce's backup his senior or junior season at Alabama. But the question was not about Jalen Milroe specifically. The question was, is this the guy that the Panthers need to be our own TaysomHill? And I don't think it's a crazy thought. I just don't know.
Not if you call it that. I don't want it.
Okay, so that's sort of what I'm getting at. I don't know that the TaysomHill thing has been a nice bonus for the Saints. I don't know that it has been a model that every other franchise should be trying to figure out who our Taysom Hill is.
You don't see other franchises doing it?
I can only think of one, and it predated Taysom Hill. It was the way the Dolphins used Pat White when he first got to the NFL. We're not running a whole lot of Wildcat anymore at the NFL level.
No, we're not. It's kind of gone by the wayside. When I literally saw that in big all caps bold letters, and I was like, Demetri's trying to get me juiced before this even starts, or he's hoping maybe I skip the rundown and then he can drop that on the air to me, like, Brunlow, you think the Panthers can throw the hill? And then I just walk off in a rage and rage quit the podcast. Right. No, as much as I don't like Taysom Hill, I get what the logic is, but I don't really I guess I don't fully follow because the thing about Milroe is, I mean, look, I've had a great time watching him play football. But I don't think his questionable accuracy at times it kind of eliminates some of what the pass threat has to be.
So that I think gets to, so there's another part of this that has more to do with Hill that I think is along the lines of what you're saying with Milroe. Remember all the opportunities the Saints have had to give TaysomHill significant snaps. They have never given them to TaysomHill.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So what kind of weapon is that really? And boy,
do you mean at quarterback specifically, or
just in that, if Hill is in the backfield,
yeah,
at this point, don't you just assume it's going to be some sort of power run or short pass? You don't think there's a second level coming to that play anymore, right?
Yes, and does that matter all the time? Obviously, it doesn't. Infuriatingly, right. No, it does not. But at the same time, if you kind of know what's coming, it takes away some of the element of having a quarterback back there. I mean, yeah, technically he could throw, and it's not like Milroe is a terrible passer or anything. I'm not saying that. It's just that if you're especially, I would like it more if say, and it's not like Milroe can't throw a deep ball. He can, but it's not always. You're not always going to get. Yeah,
I've been saying, as a Bama fan, I think Detroit is an ideal situation for Milroe because nobody would be expecting him to play for 2, maybe even 3 years. You're right. He's got a deep ball. He doesn't have much else. It's going to take time for him to develop. I think the difference between him and certainly Hill, maybe even someone like Riley Leonard, is I don't think Hill or Leonard thought they had an NFL future solely as a quarterback. So let me just say for Hill never thought he had an NFL future solely as a quarterback. Yes. Milroe seems really resistant to any role other than being under center. And how do you build a scheme with a guy that doesn't want to be a part of it?
And that's some of my hesitance with him. And I also I get it to an extent because no offense, but he got the absolute shit beaten out of him at Bama for the better part of the last 2 years because it was because for a while he was their running game too. And so he took a pounding. He was not healthy by the end of the year. And then everyone's looking at his play and evaluating him through that too. And he had to be the offense a lot of the times. And that wasn't going to be sustainable for him or for them. And he took a big hit to his draft stock, I think, as a result of that. And some of it was his own ceiling and skill set and whatever. But I will say the idea of if of a deep ball threat throwing quarterback with the threat of the run mixed in does intrigue me in that way of if that's the secondary threat, right? Yeah. Of him hitting a deep ball and he can do that, then okay, now I'm intrigued. And he would also be willing to run. But again, it's like you said, his willingness to accept that kind of a role. I think the Lions, as much as the Panthers offense has improved from the year before last, it's still a situation where, which offense would you think would find a better role for Milroe, the Panthers or the Lions? Of course you would pick someone like that,
And look, I think the reason that drafting Milroe for a role like that makes some sense to me is he does seem like a Canales kind of guy, right? He is relentlessly positive. The idea of a gadget guy that can do everything seems to fit with what we know of Dave Canales as a play caller. I just don't think you can get over the fact that this isn't what the guy wants to be doing. And if you're drafting him, you're probably building him up to be traded. There's no way he's TaysomHill where he becomes a long-term part of your offensive strategy.
That, and it feels like a luxury as well. Right. That feels, as much as the like we said, as much as the Panthers have improved, it's not as if they don't have other areas of need to address on the offensive side.
Lauren, so, I would ask you this. I'm going to ask you to tap into some trauma here. When was the last time the Panthers wasted a fairly early pick? Because you would think that Milroe, you'd have to take him in the first 3 rounds. When was the last time they used a pick on a quarterback not to play quarterback that early in a draft? And how did that work out?
Edwards.
Exactly.
And I don't.
Yeah. That's the reaction I was looking for.
And by the way, they traded up to get him with the Patriots.
Yep.
With the Patriots, with Bill Belichick at his peak power.
Oh, but
Okay.
Lord, it was going to be such a feel good story. The whole city was, or the whole state was going to be behind it. It made sense, right?
Yeah, you know who felt bad? Me. I felt very bad. I was so mad. That was the Jimmy Clausen draft too.
It was, yes.
Easily worst draft in franchise history. But
Uh,
yes, yeah, it didn't work out well. Like they got him to return kicks and stuff. And Armonte, I think, had a better idea of what he was going to be in the league.
Absolutely.
But still, like, and it was too high. And that's the thing, is I think you'd have to get him too high. A team that's all set on offense and feels a lot better about what they've got can afford to add a guy like that and just say, hey, let's just see what happens and what we could do with a guy like that. Whereas, like, I don't think the Panthers can really afford to take that kind of a leap, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of feeling bad and making your tummy hurt, boy, have you seen what ShaqThompson has been going through this offseason?
I mean, I don't think I've seen much about him at all.
Well, all right, so that is part of it. Released by the Panthers doesn't seem to be on anybody's radar. Like he may
Surprising.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? Like the guy, I think at his age with his injury history, it's sort of similar to some of these receivers we're talking about. Like you kind of get why those calls aren't coming. The thing that those receivers aren't dealing with that ShaqThompson is, though, is while all this is going on, his partner in his trucking company has been stealing lots and lots of money from him to the tune of about $500,000.
Jesus.
Yeah. First of all, I did not know Shaq was big in the trucking world.
No, that's interesting. I guess and look, you see and hear about this a lot with NFL guys where, they have all this money now and they want to make investments into starting some kind of a business, whether it's like a restaurant or just something like along those lines. And, and a lot of times they get taken advantage of by people who are supposed to have their interests in mind. And it really sucks, honestly.
So the story here, I do not mean to laugh, but the story is kind of like adorable boys having fun kind of stories of this is a guy that he met at his barber shop and they just started talking about how much they like big trucks. And so ShaqThompson, I guess, always had the idea
version of the Sir Mix-a-Lot song.
ShaqThompson, I guess, always had the idea that when he had the money, he was going to make his Tonka collection real, and thought this guy talked enough in a way that he knew what he was doing, hired him to be his business manager. And now the guy has been charged with about $500,000 worth of embezzlement. In addition to having the money stolen from him, I want a happy ending for Shaq this year, right? Like I even if it's you bring him in right at the deadline or right at the start of camp for a tryout, so be it. Given everything,
somewhere. I don't injury history. I know it's not great, but like he will end up somewhere. I would be stunned if he's not somewhere. Someone will take a chance on him.
I hope so, just because of how long he was here and how much of his body he gave to this place. I hope he gets to decide when he's done. I also would not blame him, even though as a fan, it is not what I want to see. I also would not blame him if he were to say, hey, these offers that I'm getting, that money is not worth the more physical toll on me. Totally. If that's the case, so be it. I would like for him to get a little bit better than just a couple of nice social media posts when his career is in fact over.
Yeah, it just really, the money thing makes me really sad because it's very common. I mean, maybe not very. It's pretty common with professional
athletes. It's pretty common, yeah.
Because they're not, sometimes this is their first time having that much money. Sometimes it's their own family members that steal from them. Like it's real people when money gets involved. I think we've seen this, and certainly in our country in the last however long here, you count it. Like people act like absolute animals when money is involved. It's wild.
Trent Richardson, another former Bama guy who drafted by the Browns and traded to the Colts. He went broke, and he has talked on the record before about part of it is nobody is in these guys' ears to tell them it's okay to say no to people, no matter how long you've known them.
And that's such a big factor for some of them, because some of them come from a place that not a lot of people make it out of too, and they feel like they have to go back and like give back in ways beyond like starting a community center or whatever. It's like they feel like they need to give money to people that that they've cared about in their whole lives. And then suddenly that can become like people asking for more and more. And then they feel obligated and they lose like lifelong relationships. Sometimes you hear about, I mean, it's just money it can turn people into monsters. And, when it comes to trying to get someone else's, and it just sucks. And I hate that for Shaq. And I like I said, I'll be really surprised if no one takes a chance on him, because I think he's still young enough that like people can look past. I mean, there are people with dicier injury histories that get second chances,
Yeah, I just do not want the reality, even though, hell, this might make him the happiest in the world, of like years from now, you're at a truck stop and you see a guy and you're like, is that ShaqThompson? Is that ShaqThompson pulling that 18-wheeler?